Some nights change everything. This was the night she showed up at my door soaking wet and about to turn my world upside down. It was one of those Thursday nights where everything felt heavy. Jake dragged his suitcase through the apartment door, letting it fall with a loud thud on the wooden floor. His shoulders ached from carrying his laptop bag for what felt like forever, and his shirt was wrinkled from the long flight home. The apartment was dark and quiet, just like he had left it 4 days ago. He flicked on the lights and looked around at his small but cozy living space. The same blue couch sat in front of the television, the same stack of books waited on the coffee table, and the same plant in the corner looked a little more droopy than when he had left. Jake worked for a software company that sent him to different cities to meet clients. It was good money, but traveling every week was starting to wear him down. He was only 28, but lately he felt much older. All his friends were getting married or buying houses while he was living out of hotel rooms and eating airport food. He walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Empty, except for a carton of milk that was probably spoiled and some leftover pizza that looked questionable. He made a mental note to order something for dinner, but first he needed to sit down and just breathe. As he was about to collapse onto his couch, his phone started buzzing. He pulled it out of his pocket and saw 3 missed calls from Lily. They had been friends since college, and she had moved to his city about 6 months ago for a new job. She was one of those people who could light up any room she walked into, always laughing and making everyone around her feel good about themselves. Jake had been thrilled when she told him she was moving here. They had lost touch for a few years, after graduation, like most college friends do. But when they reconnected, it felt like no time had passed at all. She still had the same bright smile and the same way of making him feel like the most interesting person in the world when she talked to him. The problem was, somewhere along the way, his feelings for her had grown into something more than friendship. He told himself it was just because he was lonely from all the traveling, or because it was nice to have a familiar face in the city. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Every time they hung out, he found himself paying attention to little things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she always ordered the same drink at coffee shops but spent 10 minutes reading the menu anyway, the way she laughed at his terrible jokes that nobody else found funny. But Lily was way out of his league. She was beautiful, smart, and had this confidence that drew people to her wherever she went. She worked at a trendy marketing agency downtown and always had stories about interesting projects and creative people she worked with. Meanwhile, Jake felt like his life was just work, sleep, and more work. He had tried to ask her out properly several times, but something always stopped him. What if she said no? What if it ruined their friendship? What if she had been nice to him all these months just because she felt sorry for him? So instead, he settled for their casual hangouts. Coffee on Sunday mornings, movies on Friday nights, walks through the park when the weather was nice. It was better than nothing, but it also felt like torture sometimes, being so close to someone he cared about, but not being able to tell them how he really felt. Jake looked at his phone again. Should he call her back? He was exhausted and probably not good company right now. Plus, it was already past 8 o'clock. She was probably out doing something fun, maybe with her co-workers or other friends she had made in the city. He set the phone down on the coffee table and rubbed his eyes. The apartment felt even quieter now. He could hear his upstairs neighbor walking around and the sound of traffic from the street below. This was the part of traveling he hated most, coming home to an empty place with no one to talk to about his trip. His laptop bag was still hanging on his shoulder, so he took it off and set it next to his suitcase. He should probably unpack, do some laundry, and get ready for work tomorrow. But all he wanted to do was order Chinese food and watch something mindless on television until he fell asleep. Just as he was reaching for his phone to look up food delivery options, he heard something that made him freeze. Footsteps in the hallway, outside his door. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped right in front of his apartment. Jake lived on the 3rd floor of an older building, and sound traveled easily through the thin walls. He was used to hearing his neighbors come and go, but something about these footsteps felt different. They had stopped completely, like someone was standing right outside his door. He waited, listening carefully. Maybe it was just someone looking for a different apartment, or a delivery person checking addresses. But the footsteps didn't move on. If anything, it sounded like whoever it was had moved closer to his door. Jake stood up slowly, trying not to make any noise. His heart was beating a little faster now. He wasn't expecting anyone, and his building was usually pretty secure. He walked quietly toward the door and looked through the peephole, but the hallway light was dim and he couldn't see much. Then he heard something that made his breath catch in his throat. The sound of a key sliding into his lock. Only 2 people had keys to his apartment. His landlord, who lived across town and never showed up unannounced, and Lily. He had given her a spare key the week before when she offered to check on his plant while he was traveling. But why would she be coming over this late without calling? First, the key turned slowly in the lock and Jake stepped back from the door. His mind was racing with possibilities, but none of them made complete sense. Maybe something was wrong and she needed help. Maybe she had tried calling and he hadn't answered fast enough. Maybe there was some kind of emergency. He heard the door handle turn, and suddenly his quiet Thursday evening was about to become something completely different. The door swung open and Jake's heart nearly stopped. But instead of some stranger or emergency, it was Lily. She practically tumbled through the doorway, laughing so hard she could barely catch her breath. Her hair was completely soaked and sticking to her face, and her light blue dress was dripping water all over his wooden floor. "Oh my goodness, Jake," she gasped between laughs, trying to push her wet hair out of her eyes. "You will not believe what just happened to me." Jake just stood there staring at her like he had seen a ghost. His brain was still trying to catch up with what was happening. 1 second, he was alone in his quiet apartment, and the next second, Lily was standing in his living room looking like she had jumped in a swimming pool fully clothed. "I was walking here from that work event downtown, the one I told you about last week." She kicked off her soaked shoes and they made a squelching sound on the floor. And everything was fine, the weather was perfect, and then out of nowhere it started pouring rain. She gestured wildly with her hands, sending tiny droplets of water flying around the room. Jake noticed she was shivering slightly, but she seemed too excited to care about being cold. "I'm talking about the kind of rain that comes down so hard you can't even see where you're walking," she continued, peeling off her drenched cardigan and hanging it on the back of one of his kitchen chairs. "I tried to find somewhere to wait it out, but everything was closed or packed with other people trying to stay dry." Jake finally found his voice. "Why didn't you call me? I could have picked you up." "I tried, but my phone got soaked and stopped working." She pulled her phone out of her small purse and held it up. The screen was completely black. "I remembered you gave me your spare key last week and your building was only 3 blocks away, so I just ran for it." She was standing in his living room now, water still dripping from her clothes onto his floor. Her dress was clinging to her in a way that made Jake try very hard to look anywhere else. He had seen Lily dressed up for work events before, but never like this. Never so unguarded. "I probably look terrible," she said, trying to smooth down her hair. "Like some kind of crazy person who doesn't know how to check the weather forecast." "No, you don't look terrible at all," Jake said quickly, and then immediately felt his face get hot. Why did he always say things like that? Now she would think he was being weird. But Lily just smiled at him, that same bright smile that made his chest feel tight every time he saw it. "You're sweet, but I know I look like I got attacked by a garden sprinkler." She walked over to his couch and sat down carefully, trying not to get the fabric too wet. "I hope it's okay that I just showed up like this. I know you just got back from your trip and you're probably tired." "It's totally fine," Jake said, and he meant it. Having her here, even soaked and unexpected, was better than sitting alone in his empty apartment feeling sorry for himself. "How was your trip anyway?" she asked, tucking her legs under herself on the couch. "Did those clients drive you crazy, like they usually do?" Jake found himself relaxing for the first time all evening. This was normal. This was how they always talked to each other, easy and comfortable, like they had known each other forever. "It wasn't too bad this time," he said, sitting down on the other end of the couch. "Though the hotel had the worst coffee I've ever tasted, I think they made it with dirt." Lily laughed, and Jake felt that familiar warm feeling spread through his chest. He had missed that laugh while he was away. He had missed her more than he wanted to admit even to himself. "I should get you a towel," he said, starting to get up. And maybe some dry clothes, you're shivering. I'm fine, really, she said, but he could see goosebumps on her arms. Jake went to his bedroom and grabbed the softest towel he had and one of his college sweatshirts that he knew would be huge on her. When he came back, Lily was looking around, his apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. I like what you've done with the place, she said teasingly. Very bachelor pad chic. Hey, I cleaned before I left for my trip, Jake protested, handing her the towel and sweatshirt. I know, I'm just giving you a hard time. She took the towel and started drying her hair. Actually, it feels really cozy in here, like a place where someone actually lives, not just a magazine picture. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he went to the kitchen to get her a glass of water. When he turned around, she was looking at him with an expression he had never seen before. It was softer somehow, more serious than her usual playful look. Thank you, she said quietly, for letting me barge in here like this. I know we're friends, but showing up unannounced and dripping all over your apartment is probably pushing the boundaries of friendship. You're not pushing any boundaries, Jake said, and he realized he meant it completely. You can show up here, anytime you want, soaked or not. Something shifted in the air between them then. The easy, joking atmosphere from a few minutes ago felt heavier now, more charged. Lily was still looking at him with that soft expression, and Jake felt like she was seeing something in him that he had tried to keep hidden. Lily set the towel down on the coffee table and stood up slowly. She was still wearing her wet dress, and Jake's sweatshirt was draped over her arm. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The only sound was the rain still pattering against the windows and the quiet hum of Jake's refrigerator. Jake, she said, and her voice sounded different. Not playful or teasing like usual, but uncertain, almost nervous. Yeah? She took a step closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume mixed with the fresh scent of rain. I need to tell you something. Jake's heart started beating faster. He had heard people say that before, and it usually meant something. Big was about to change. Good or bad, he couldn't tell yet. Okay, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lily looked down at her hands, then back up at him. At that work event tonight, I was supposed to be networking, you know? Meeting new people, making connections for the agency. Jake nodded, not sure where this was going. But I couldn't focus on any of it, she continued. I kept thinking about you being away on your trip, and how much I missed talking to you. And then my coworker, Jessica, she asked me if everything was okay because I seemed distracted. She paused and took a breath like she was gathering courage for what came next. And I told her I was thinking about someone, a friend, and she looked at me with this knowing smile and said, "Friends don't make you look like that." Jake felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Like what? Like someone who's in love, Lily said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Jake felt like time had stopped completely. Had she just said what he thought she said? And that's when I realized, she continued, stepping even closer to him, that maybe Jessica was right. Maybe what I've been feeling for you isn't just friendship. Jake opened his mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. This felt like a dream, the kind he had had dozens of times, but never believed could actually happen. I know this is probably weird, Lily said quickly, misreading his silence. I know we've been friends for so long, and maybe I'm ruining everything by saying this, but when it started raining tonight and I was running through the streets to get to you, all I could think about was how much I wanted to see you. Not just as a friend who needed help, but because you're the person I most want to be with. She reached out and touched his arm gently. Jake, I think I'm falling for you. Actually, I think I already fell for you weeks ago, and I've just been too scared to admit it. Jake stared at her, still trying to process what she was saying. All those months of wondering, of telling himself he wasn't good enough for her, of being afraid to ruin their friendship, and she had been feeling the same way. Say something, Lily whispered, and he could hear the vulnerability in her voice. Please, even if it's just to tell me I'm crazy. Instead of saying anything, Jake did something he had been wanting to do for months. He stepped forward, closing the small gap between them, and cupped her face gently in his hands. "You're not crazy," he said softly. "I've been in love with you since the day you moved here. Maybe even before that." Lily's eyes widened, and then her face broke into the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "Really? Really?" he said. "I just never thought someone like you could ever feel that way about someone like me." "Someone like me?" she asked, looking confused. "Beautiful, smart, funny, talented," Jake said. "Everything I'm not." Lily shook her head. "Jake, you're the kindest person I know. You're thoughtful and genuine, and you make me laugh even when I'm having the worst day. You think I don't notice, but I see how you take care of everyone around you. How you remember little things that matter to people. How you actually listen when someone is talking to you." She reached up and touched his face the same way he was touching hers. "I've been waiting for you to see yourself the way I see you," she said. And then, before Jake could say another word, before he could overthink it or talk himself out of it, Lily rose up on her tiptoes and kissed him. It wasn't a gentle, tentative first kiss. It was the kind of kiss that said everything they had been too afraid to say out loud. Months of hidden feelings and careful friendship and wondering what if all poured into that one perfect moment. Jake felt like his whole world had just shifted into place. Everything that had felt uncertain and lonely just minutes before suddenly made perfect sense. When they finally pulled apart from the kiss, both Jake and Lily were breathing heavily. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, just looking at each other like they were seeing something completely new. "Wow," Lily whispered, and then started laughing softly. "I can't believe I just did that." "I can't believe you beat me to it," Jake said, which made her laugh even more. "Beat you to it? How long have you been planning to kiss me?" Jake felt his face get red. Pretty much every day since you moved here." Lily's eyes went wide. "Every day? Jake, that's been 6 months." I know, I'm pathetic. You're not pathetic," she said, reaching up to touch his cheek. "You're just careful," which is actually really sweet. They were still standing very close to each other, and Jake realized that Lily was still wearing her wet dress. "You should probably change into something dry," he said. "You're going to catch a cold." "Right," she said, but she didn't move away from him. "Though I have to say, this whole evening has been worth getting soaked in the rain." Jake smiled. "Even showing up at my apartment looking like a drowned cat?" "Hey," Lily protested, laughing. "I thought we agreed I didn't look that bad." "You could never look bad," Jake said honestly. "But you're still shivering." Lily glanced down at herself and seemed to remember she was still in her wet clothes. "Okay, you're right. Can I borrow that sweatshirt you brought me?" "Of course, there's a bathroom right down the hall if you want to change." She picked up the sweatshirt from where she had set it on the couch and headed toward the bathroom. "Don't go anywhere," she called over her shoulder. "Where would I go?" Jake called back, but she had already closed the door. Jake sat down heavily, on his couch, trying to process everything that had just happened. 20 minutes ago, he had been alone and tired and feeling sorry for himself. Now Lily was in his bathroom changing into his clothes after telling him she was in love with him and kissing him in a way that made his head spin. He looked around his apartment and noticed all the little puddles of water from where she had been dripping. Instead of being annoyed, he found himself smiling. Those puddles were proof that this had really happened, that it wasn't just some elaborate daydream. The bathroom door opened and Lily came out wearing his old college sweatshirt. It was enormous, on her hanging down almost to her knees, and she had rolled up the sleeves several times. Her hair was still damp, but she had combed it back from her face. "Much better," she said, doing a little spin. "How do I look?" "Like you're wearing my sweatshirt," Jake said, and then realized how that sounded. "I mean, you look great. Really great." Lily came over and sat down next to him on the couch, closer than she had ever sat before. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why? Didn't you ever say anything about how you felt, I mean?" Jake was quiet for a moment, trying to figure out how to explain it. "I guess I was scared. You're so confident and outgoing, and you always seem to have everything figured out. I thought you were just being nice to me because we were old friends." "Just being nice?" Lily looked genuinely surprised. "Jake, do you think I spend every weekend with people I'm just being nice to? Do you think I call people when I have good news or bad news just to be polite?" "I don't know. Maybe." Lily shook her head. "You really don't see it, do you?" "See what?" "How special you are. Jake, you're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens at work. You're the person I call when I'm having a terrible day and need someone to make me feel better. You remember things about me that I don't even remember telling you." She tucked her legs under herself and turned to face him completely. "Like last month when I mentioned that I missed my mom's apple pie, and then the next week you showed up at my apartment with one from that bakery downtown. Or how you always make sure we go to restaurants that have vegetarian options because you know I don't eat meat even though you never make a big deal about it." Jake felt his chest get tight. He had done those things without even thinking about them. "That's just normal friend stuff." "No, it's not," Lily said firmly. "It's thoughtful, caring person stuff. It's the stuff that made me start falling for you without even realizing it." "When did you realize it?" Jake asked. Lily smiled and looked down at her hands. "Remember that night 3 weeks ago when we went to see that terrible movie? The one with the robot that could talk to animals? That's the one. It was so bad, but you kept making these funny comments under your breath that made me laugh so hard I was crying. And I remember looking over at you in the dark theater and thinking that I would rather be there with you watching the worst movie ever made than anywhere else in the world." She looked up at him. "That's when I knew it wasn't just friendship anymore." Jake reached over and took her hand. "I wish I had known. I wish I had been brave enough to tell you how I felt." "What would you have said?" Lily asked softly. Jake thought about it for a moment. "I would have told you that you make everything better just by being there. That hearing you laugh is my favorite sound in the world. That I love how you get excited about little things like finding a new coffee shop or seeing a dog wearing a sweater on the street." Lily squeezed his hand. "What else?" "I would have told you that I think about you when I'm traveling. How I take pictures of things I think you'd like and save them to show you when I get home. That coming back to this city doesn't feel like coming home until I see you." Lily's eyes were getting watery. "Jake." "And I would have told you that I was scared," he continued. "Scared that you were too good for me. Scared that I would ruin our friendship. Scared that you only saw me as that reliable friend you could count on but never get excited about." "Never get excited about?" Lily laughed, but it was a shaky laugh. "Do you know what I told Jessica tonight when she asked about you?" "What?" "I told her that there was this guy I couldn't stop thinking about, someone who made me want to be a better person. Not because he asked me to, but because he was just so genuinely good that it made me want to match that energy." She reached up and touched his face. "I told her about how you listen to me complain about work problems and always know exactly what to say to make me feel better. How you never try to fix my problems unless I ask you to, you just let me talk through them." "That doesn't sound very exciting," Jake said. "Are you kidding? Do you know how rare that is? Most people either try to solve everything for you or they just wait for their turn to talk. You actually hear me." They sat there holding hands and looking at each other, both of them still seeming a little amazed that this conversation was actually happening. "So what now?" Jake asked. Lily smiled. "Now I think we stop being scared and see what happens when two people who are crazy about each other actually admit it." 3 months later, Jake was coming home from another business trip, but this time everything was different. Instead of dreading the return to his empty apartment, he was practically bouncing in his seat on the airplane, counting down the minutes until he could get home. As his taxi pulled up in front of his building, he could see a warm light glowing in his apartment window. He knew Lily would be up there, probably reading on his couch or working on one of her design projects at his kitchen table. The thought made him smile as he grabbed his bags and headed upstairs. He opened the door to find Lily exactly where he had imagined her, curled up on his couch with a book in her lap. She looked up when she heard him come in, and her whole face lit up. "You're home," she said, jumping up and running over to him. Jake dropped his bags and caught her in a hug, spinning her around once before setting her back down. "I missed you," he said, kissing her forehead. "I missed you too. How was the client meeting?" "Good, actually. They signed the contract and everything." Jake looked around the apartment and noticed it smelled like something delicious was cooking. "Did you make dinner?" "I tried," Lily said, looking a little embarrassed. "I'm still not great at cooking, but I figured you'd be hungry when you got home." Jake walked into the kitchen and saw that she had attempted to make pasta with some kind of sauce. It didn't look perfect, but the fact that she had tried made his chest feel warm and tight. "It smells amazing," he said, and he meant it. "You don't have to lie to make me feel better," Lily laughed. "I'm not lying. Everything is better when you make it." Over dinner, they talked about his trip and her week at work. Lily told him about a new project she was excited about, and Jake told her about the funny thing that happened at the airport. It was the kind of normal, everyday conversation that Jake had never thought he wanted, but now couldn't imagine living without. After they finished eating, they settled back on the couch to watch a movie. Lily had her head on Jake's shoulder and he was playing with her hair absent-mindedly. "Jake," she said during a quiet part of the movie. "Yeah? Do you ever think about that night when I showed up here soaking wet?" Jake smiled. "Only about once a day, why?" "I was just thinking about how different everything could have been if I hadn't gotten caught in that rainstorm. If I had just gone home to my apartment instead of coming here." "But you did come here," Jake said, "and we figured it out." "Eventually," Lily laughed, "after months of both of us being too scared to say anything. I think we figured it out." "Exactly when we were supposed to," Jake said. "Maybe we needed all those months of being friends first. Maybe we needed to know each other that well before we could take the risk." Lily lifted her head to look at him. "You really think so?" "I know so. Because now I know that you steal the covers when you sleep and you sing in the shower and you cry at commercials with dogs in them." "I do not cry at dog commercials," Lily protested. "You absolutely do. I've seen it." "Okay, maybe a little," she admitted. "But only the really sad ones." Jake kissed the top of her head. "And I love that about you. I love all of it." They settled back into comfortable silence, watching the movie and just enjoying being together. Jake thought about how much his life had changed since that rainy Thursday night. His apartment didn't feel empty anymore. Coming home from trips felt like actually coming home now, instead of just returning to a place where he kept his stuff. "Lily," he said softly. "Thank you for getting caught in the rain that night." She looked up at him and smiled. "Thank you for giving me a key. I'd give you 100 keys if you wanted them." "One is enough," she said, settling back against his shoulder, "as long as it gets me home to you." Jake realized that this was what happiness felt like. Not the big, dramatic kind from movies, but the quiet, steady kind that came from being with someone who knew all your flaws and chose to stay anyway. Someone who made ordinary Tuesday nights feel special just by being there. He looked down at Lily, who was getting sleepy against his shoulder, and thought about how a single moment of courage, hers in coming to his apartment that night, his in finally telling her how he felt, had changed everything. Sometimes the best things in life really did happen when you least expected them. Sometimes all it took was getting caught in the rain and having somewhere warm to go.